Hi, and welcome to the Life They Live podcast. I'm the host, Nina. I have a conversation with the fourth best tour leader, Matty Dyas. What is a tour leader, you may ask? Matty explains that a tour guide knows everything about something, whereas a tour leader knows something about everything. As stated in the name, they lead tours in different countries and they have to ensure the safety as well as the well being of their group. Due to his experience, Matty shares in this episode what he thinks is the best way to travel. And if you're curious, he also shares what, according to him, are the best countries to visit. So if you're interested, I really recommend you to listen to this episode. On this YouTube channel, I interview guests who share their passions and inspire us to overcome our fears. If you don't want to miss the next episodes, then make sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you want to support this podcast, as these episodes take a lot of time, then I would really appreciate it if you leave a like as well as a comment. Hi, Matty. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me on this podcast.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for having me. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Where are you actually right now?
Right now, I am in Cornwall, which is the southwest of England in the UK.
Okay. Yeah, right now I'm in the Alps in France, so I hope I won't have internet problems because it's not as fast as it should be here, but so far it looks fine. So I'm happy to
Very nice.
be having this
Why?
conversation. Sorry?
Yeah. Why are you in the Alps?
So I'm French actually, and my family comes from the Alps, so we have a family house here. And right now I'm taking a gap here, so I thought I would come in the Alps, enjoy the mountains a little bit. We have nice views here, and we can ski a little bit, so that's nice.
Oh, that's cool. Very nice.
Yeah, very nice, and I'm happy to be having this conversation with you. Can you introduce yourself maybe in a few words for the ones who don't know you?
Yeah, I'm Matty. I'm from the northwest of England, a place called St Helens, which is close to Liverpool and Manchester, if you're talking about geography. I am a tour leader by profession. So I'd take small groups on like little adventures around Europe, really, and little adventure holidays. And before that, I've lived all over the world, and my hobby is running ultra marathons. That's me in a nutshell, really.
Great. So as you know, this podcast is all about passion. So today we're going to talk about your passion for traveling. I guess the first question that comes to my mind is when did you discover that you had a passion for traveling, or like what was your first travel?
Yeah, so I was lucky that my um, from a working class home in the northwest of England, but we always went on holiday at least once a year to somewhere abroad, like on an aeroplane, which is not very common for that town for that time. So I was quite lucky for that, really. Um, and then I think it was my third year of university, and we had to because I did journalism, and we had to produce a magazine. And me and my girlfriend, we used to do like weekends away, and we'd go on little holiday city breaks to Paris and Rome, and try to go to little places abroad. And so for our magazine project, we like created this magazine called Gap Year Traveler, and that was like that. So then we started to position ourselves as like travel writers, really. And then in the last year of university, I went to Brazil volunteering, and it was my first time in like a really exotic location, and it was fascinating, and I had a great time. So I think probably it was visiting Brazil when it was that opened my eyes to not just traveling in Europe, but traveling to unusual destinations around the world.
hmm Because you've said also that you've lived in foreign countries. So did you first live in foreign countries and then travel uh, when you were at university, or was it the other way around? In what part of your life did you live in several countries?
Yeah, so after university, the plan was to, before getting like a real job, the plan was to um, do like a gap year studying abroad. So we were going to move to Seoul or South Korea in general, and there's lots of English teaching jobs there. So the plan was we didn't have any money, so it was like work for do a school year and use that money then to travel. The South Korea job fell through, and we ended up moving to Bangkok because we'd already quit our jobs. Um, and I think because we never had loads of money, it was always we would, rather than go traveling, we'd find a job in a different country and use that country as a base to travel and while still earning money. So lived in Bangkok for a few years, lived in Spain, lived in Haiti, lived in Slovakia, Czech Republic, and then Australia. But all the while still working, not just traveling. It was mix working and playing at the same time.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask you a question about your profession and traveling while working, because I think for a lot of people it's hard to mix the two, work and traveling. So what is your experience? Maybe do you have any advice for people who work and find it hard to travel at the same time?
Yeah, well, you see all these people who are digital nomads now, which I certainly wasn't a digital nomad. Um, I used English as my passport around the world, so I became an English teacher, teaching English as a foreign language. So that was I was very lucky to be born in England and be a native English speaker. So you can get a job basically anywhere around the world. It doesn't pay very well, but you know you're going to get a job. So if there's any English speakers listening, that is always an option. And countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Southeast Asia, they aren't fussy either. They say native English speaker, but you don't have to be native English. As long as you can speak English, you could get a job. So, like I say, it doesn't pay amazing, but it certainly is a way of getting around the world. But you're not a digital nomad. You have to
Mhm.
work in a school.
Yeah, obviously, and I mean, I also teach French online, for example, so it's also possible to do it online. It's also if people are interested, that's also something that's developing more and more, I think.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I've been teaching online for a year now.
Hmm.
So that is a way of teaching while traveling. Yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So certainly that is a good option to be more nomadic rather than working in a school.
But you said also that your degree was for journalism, right? Did you use it after, or you didn't use it? You're not using it right now, really.
I don't use it right now. I used it after for like maybe 2 years. I always wanted to be a writer, so I did journalism to become a writer, but that never really worked out. So I'd written for some newspapers in England, like some big ones, and I felt like I achieved my goal. And then I moved into PR, public relations. So you're on the other side of the fence. You're trying to get other people into newspapers. So that was quite fun and quite challenging. Um, and then when I was in Bangkok, I did a bit of writing, like food criticking and feature writing. Um, but I don't think you lose the skill as a journalist for asking questions. I think I'm definitely very inquisitive and like asking questions. So it's something that I do use every day, really.
Yes, and you do have a podcast, also a travel podcast, so I'm sure that also helps.
Yeah, yeah, that does help. I think it adds a bit of my journalistic background, adds a degree of professionalism, I'd say. I, so I have like a reason to be asking questions. Um, like it supports the podcast.
Hmm.
Um, gives it a bit of credibility, you could say.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, I understand. And you've mentioned that you're now a tour leader. So could you explain how you became a tour leader, and also maybe what a tour leader is, because it can be confusing between a tour leader and a tour guide.
Yeah, well, there is this cliche phrase that we use. Um, we're not tour guides, we're tour leaders, and the difference is A tour guide knows everything about something, and a tour leader knows something about everything. So you can imagine a tour guide, let's say, I don't know, Barcelona. They live and work in Barcelona. They are probably from Barcelona, and every day they do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tours of Barcelona. They know that city like the back of their hands. For me, I've led group tours in maybe 15 countries, hundreds of cities and towns. There's no way I will know that town or city the same as that guide. That is their wheelhouse. Um, so yeah, my job is like getting people from A to B safely, having a good time, and um, facilitating those meetups. So, say if someone wanted to have a guided tour of Barcelona, then I could connect them with Julio in Barcelona. But so that's the difference between tour guide and tour leader. I got into it because I love travel. That was my passion, but I was always teaching to travel. I do like teaching. I am quite good at teaching, and I do love the kids and the students, and I've taught all ages. I think I've definitely learned to love it. But I always wanted to be in the travel field. So when I was living in Slovakia, I love hiking and running in the mountains. So I wanted to be like a hiking running guide in the Tatra Slovakia. So I was looking for jobs if that was a thing, and I came across an advert for a company called Intrepid, and they're an Australian company, and they were looking for tour leaders in Slovakia, basically. So I applied, and then it got me interested in this tour leader mentality. So I didn't know it was a thing before, and then I started looking for different companies, and eventually I chose Intrepid, and Intrepid chose me. And after a lengthy hiring process, I I got the job in Eastern and Central Europe, and I was the tour leader, leading trips around Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Ukraine, Transnistria, all these fun and exciting places, as well as some more normal places like Austria, Czech Republic, and Slovakia and
Okay.
Poland.
Okay, and like you've explained, a tour guide focuses really more on one city. You've chose Barcelona, for example, whereas as a tour leader, you really give tours in different countries. So I'm wondering, in terms of the logistics, how it works. Do you stay in one country and then you're contacted maybe to lead a tour in another country? Like how do you organize everything when you have to give tours in different countries?
Yeah, well, things have changed a lot because of the pandemic. Overland tours, crossing borders, is so different now. Like it's not really. It's something that the whole industry's changed. But previously, you wouldn't have a. Well, me. I'm talking about me personally. Didn't have a home. Didn't have a base. I just have a backpack. So I'd know I'd have to meet a group in Budapest on Monday, the 20th of March, and I know I'd have to take them to Bucharest by the 10th of April, and everything in between. And then after that, it was like, right, you have to go from Bucharest to Kiev, and then Kiev, you have to go back to Budapest, or then you have to go to Vienna. So you just life is on the road, and it's so exciting, and you're living in different hotels, and you're living out your backpack, and organization is key. But you have to carry everything you own on your back, and just it's a fantastic lifestyle. Now it's changed. Now I'm based in the UK. I'm doing trips around the UK, and when I do go abroad, say in January, I did a trip in Norway. It was like, right, I have to fly to Norway, do the trip, fly back to the UK. I did a trip in Ireland a few weeks ago, fly to Ireland, fly home. It's not as exciting, but at least you can have a base and have a home, which is nice. But you start collecting more things when you have a house.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand for sure. But it seems interesting that idea that when you go to work, you always go to work in a different country. So I think that's nice. I've never really heard either of tour leader, so I'm interested to know more about it. And you've also become the fourth best tour leader. So could you explain also how that happened?
Yeah, that's like a silly award
Mm-hmm.
title that basically 2021 was a strange year for the industry. Um, it was at the beginning of the year we didn't know if any tours were going to be running at all, like because of the pandemic and because of COVID. And it turned out that actually in some countries that tours were being led and many tours did go ahead. And there's an industry magazine called Wanderlust magazine, and every year they have an award ceremony, and like it could be the best country of the year or the best city of the year, um, the best tourist board, and they do different awards. And one of the awards is best tour leader, and they invite all the biggest tour companies in the world, and all the smallest tour companies. Anyone in the world can apply, and it just so happened that Intrepid put my name in the ring, in the hat, with like a reason why and like some testimonials from clients and from other people, and this panel of judges from Wanderlust created this list of 10 tour leaders, and I was number 4. So it's quite arbitrary, but it's very fun, and it certainly ratifies me as a real tour leader. So it was quite exciting for me, and I am quite proud of it actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, I can imagine. And you've mentioned a little bit where you give tours, but could you maybe just say it quickly again in which countries you give tours currently?
Currently, I'm right now. It's mainly UK,
Mm-hmm.
but then in 2022, this year, I've already done tours in Norway, Northern Ireland, Ireland. So it's still I'm still a freelance tour leader. I can, and the beauty of my job of not being a tour guide, I can do it anywhere. So if I got the call tomorrow to go and lead a tour in a country I've never been to, that's something I can do. So I don't have to be the expert in that country because it's not about being that guide or the expert. It's about being a leader and a logistics and safety guy. But that being said, I do try to be a bit of a guide as well by doing a lot of research before I go. But in the past, I've done tours like all over Eastern and Central Europe. Really, most of
Mm-hmm.
those countries.
Okay, so from what I understand, then tour leader is really about the experience you offer, and maybe you show to your clients a different way of traveling. So saying that, then in your opinion, what is like the best way to travel? Or I mean, there's probably not one way, but how do you usually organize your trips? What is important for you to share with your clients when you travel?
Yeah, well, I'll caveat it. Although some people, time and money is a luxury, so it's very easy for me to say what I'm going to say. But some people only have week holidays or 2 week holidays, and they have to fly and they have to be in certain places at certain times. So if that's the case for you, then go ahead. At least you're traveling and getting to see the world. Then it's very easy for me to say that's a bad thing, but it's not. As long as you're going out to see the world, do it however you can. My preferred way would be to take your time, really. Don't worry about ticking the country, like ticking the boxes. Like I have to visit every country right away. Maybe, and this is a problem I face all the time. Is it better to do um, 5 countries in 3 days or 3 countries in 5 days? And to be honest, I think it's better to do countries more slowly and more in depth than ticking boxes and try and add into your list. So I definitely encourage that. Don't worry too much about getting your country tally up. That will come naturally. Um, but one of the best ways of traveling a country, I think, is avoiding internal flights unless you have to because of time sensitivity. But taking public transport, like taking the buses, taking the trains, taking the boat, taking the ferries, and it gets you it with the locals. That's how the locals travel, and it gets you more of an experience and more of a sense of the country and the people. So that's a definitely that's the way I like to travel. And there's like, say for instance, I'm going to Turkey next week on Saturday, and we're going to Istanbul. I've never been to Istanbul, and it's one of the world's greatest cities, so I'm told. And it has these big tourist monuments that everyone says you have to see these places, and I probably will see them because it'd be rude not to. But that is the least of my interest. I might look. I'm not bothered about those type of things. For me, I want to go getting lost in the back alleys, getting lost in the back streets, tasting all the street foods, going to these weird, dodgy bars and these hostile-looking cafes, and getting off the beaten track. That's what I'm looking forward to about Istanbul and Turkey in general. Not to see the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah, I think that's important in every city you visit. Actually, like if I take, for example, I was born in Paris, and if I take Paris as an example, I also can see the clear difference between just going to the main monuments where all the tourists are, and then doing more non-touristy activities. And I think that's important. That's a good general advice that you can give to anyone visiting a city. Sometimes, obviously, when you visit a city, you want to view the famous monuments when you're there, but maybe then you can do a little balance between visiting the famous monuments and then also doing the more local activities for sure. So are those then, is that your main priority when you travel? Do you have other priorities? I don't know if that's the right word, but do you have other priorities, maybe, I guess?
Yeah, when I look back at my travel memories and the places I've been to, it's never the monuments or the landmarks. They're never stick in my mind, apart from a couple of places that are wow moments. But usually it's the people and the characters that you meet at the bars, and those memories that are formed in those connections. So for me, it's about finding finding the people, and it's a bit cliche to say the people make the place, but it's true. And those are my favorite memories, and you can't manufacture them and you can't plan them, but what you can do is put yourself in those situations where those encounters can happen, and they're the ones that always stick in my mind from my travels. So it's my priority is trying to put myself into those places.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And also talking back about visiting famous monuments with social media, I also think sometimes now a lot of people, they go visit. I mean, I've done it also myself. They go visit some monuments, take a picture, and then leave, and then you don't have that experience that really forms, or you don't have those memories. So you can sometimes forget about that. I think when you travel, if you're just really following a route of visiting monument after monument. So obviously it's hard to learn a language right before traveling, but I think also if you have the basics of the language, I think that also helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, like just being able to say hello, thank you, or cheers. Like cheers goes a long way. If you can say, if you're in a bar in a strange like for you country, and you can say like cheers to someone sat next to you at the bar or across the table in their language, that automatically like breaks the ice, and then they know you're not from there, but cheers, and then it's a good way in, and something as simple as that can spark those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's also important, especially now that if people speak English, it can be easy sometimes to just go with the easy way and speaking English. But I do, from experience, also realize that when you try to speak the language, you get a different type of experience. So that's also something that I personally think is important when traveling. And you've mentioned that you've lived in foreign countries and you've also traveled, of course. Apart from the duration of the stay, what for you is the main difference between, what are the main differences between living in a country and then being a tourist and visiting a country?
Yeah, it there's a huge difference, and like yeah, the difference is massive. Like for instance, I lived in Bangkok for 3 years. I know places in Bangkok that the tourists would never go to, and they wouldn't know about, not in the guidebooks. Um, but it also like you can tap into like you get to know things in a way that only people who live there get to know them, and it's hard to think of an example, but it's just the places, the back streets, the cafes, the restaurants, the bars that the guidebooks and the YouTube vloggers only have so much time, and they all kind of tend to follow the same recipes. But if you live there, you got all the time in the world to go and explore and um, to meet the people and form the friendships, and then those friendships can take you to other places. And there's so like Thailand for 3 years, and I haven't even scratched the surface of Thailand. Um, like I really haven't. But I've tried as well. I've been around in Thailand, but um, that just shows you how different it is to being 3 years or. And the one of the things that frustrates me a lot is people tell me, "Oh, you lived in Bangkok for 3 years." Oh, I hate Bangkok. I was there for 2 days, and they went to Khao San Road, and they were like, "Oh, Bangkok's rubbish." Yeah, but like, yeah, you went to one street in one part of the city for 1 day. Of course, it's rubbish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Different experiences for different people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I totally get that. I mean, I've also lived in several countries, and I do I do think, yeah, there are huge differences between living in a country and just visiting a country. Also, you get to live more of a, daily, like, normal life, if I may say, in that country, and you get to experience the little things that you don't have time to experience when you're a tourist. So it is, of course, if you have the opportunity, I think it is valuable, but of course not everyone can just decide to live in a foreign countries, and there are also the negative aspects that come with it, such as, living far from your family and stuff like that. But yeah, I do think it's interesting to talk with other people that have that experience, because obviously everyone who's lived in the foreign countries will have a totally different experience. So that's always interesting conversations to me. And could you maybe tell us one of your favorite countries where you've lived and one of your favorite countries that you've visited?
Yeah, so it's become apparent that probably Thailand is an excellent country. The expat lifestyle in Thailand and Bangkok in particular was fantastic. Like swimming pool, a maid. You don't have a kitchen, so you eat out every meal, and that's on a relatively low expat wage as well. It's a shame that the local people aren't on that wage, but when you get hired as a teacher, that's the wage that you get put on. So you had a fantastic lifestyle, and I do love Thailand, and I do miss it. The only reason I left Thailand because there's this thing like there's a saying that once Bangkok has you, like you can't escape. Like Bangkok has you now, and I know a few people like that, and it's not a bad thing. I was certainly going that way, but after 3 years, it was like if we don't leave now and find other places, maybe we'll find a place that we like better or like more, and we can always come back to Bangkok. Bangkok will always still be there. That's why we left to try and find other places, um, and experience other places. But in terms of my favorite countries that I've visited, off the top of my head, there's a few that spring to mind just without even thinking too hard. But Japan, I enjoyed Japan. Myanmar slash Burma, um, Cuba, and then in Eastern Europe, I really enjoy like Ukraine and Romania. Um, yeah, so they're the ones that spring to mind of my favorite places, but I've not given it too much thought. If you ask me again in an hour or tomorrow, I'd say different countries.
And what maybe do all these countries have in common, or what about them was specifically interesting to you?
They're all completely different to my usual way of life, the way I've grown up. Japan, famously an alien country, everything's different. Um, Myanmar, very difficult to get around, difficult to plan. At the time I went, it had kind of only just opened up, and it felt like you were just discovering this new place. And I said like some of the landmarks don't really never live up to the hype, but the one that springs to mind that does is Began in Myanmar, which is like this this landscape of temples and like stupas. I can't think of the word, but it's mind blowing. It's amazing. And then Cuba, I think I could live in Cuba. Maybe not so much the rationing and the that side of it, but it's such a fantastic place. Havana is one of the world's great cities, I'd say. Just you can spend days just walking around the neighborhoods, getting lost, uh, and yeah. So I'd say those three places because they're very different to the places that I grew up, um, and they're not just like your typical European places that, although although different, you kind of know what you're going to get with a European country, European city. But these countries are totally different to what we're used to.
Yeah, while you were talking about this, actually, um, I know that for a lot of Europeans, traveling outside Europe, like you said, you feel like you're more um how can I say, I forgot the word now in English, but you go out more of your comfort zone, maybe you discover new landscapes. So I know that a lot of Europeans, always are looking forward to getting out of Europe. But there are also, beautiful European countries that are totally different. And as a European tour leader, because you do a lot of tour, you lead a lot of tours in Europe. Maybe what's your view about that, about being a European, maybe, and yeah, especially with the pandemic, now that it's more complicated to travel outside of Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing to point out is a lot of my guests in Europe are perhaps Australian or American or Canadian or from New Zealand. So I tend not to get European
Mm-hmm.
guests on my trips because they to them Europe is like safe. They know how to do Europe by themselves, and it's easy for them. Um, but for the people overseas coming to Europe, it's a different kettle of fish. So then that's why they come on the tours. Um, but absolutely, even if you're European, there's some countries that I would say visit. Um, Slovakia is one of my favorite countries in the world. It's beautiful. It's got beautiful scenery. Romania is a true hidden gem. People write off Romania, but it's a fantastic country. There's a place in Moldova called Transnistria. It's kind of like a Russian. It's an unrecognized country. It's like a kind of Russian breakaway state um, within Moldova, and this is aside from all political things that are going on now. This is a travel. I'm talking about travel here,
Mm-hmm.
not politics. Um, it's such an exciting place to visit in Moldova, and Moldova is the least visited country in Europe. And you can go to this place called Transnistria. You have to cross the border. It feels like how I'd imagine going to like North Korea. It's exciting and you get this real sense of adventure, but still you're in Europe basically, and so you can find adventures not too far from home. They're still there, and you can be intrepid and off the beaten track within Europe, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it also depends a lot on like how you travel. I can imagine if you do a backpacking tour, for example, in Europe, and you sleep at hostels or something like that, then you get a different like feeling than if you take the plane and stay at more luxurious hotels. It's also about the facilities and how you travel. I think that would change your experience and maybe make it a bit more adventurous. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, well, certainly, I'd like I said, public transport is definitely something that I'd advocate taking the trains, taking the buses. Me personally, I can't be bothered with hostels unless it's a city that's really, really expensive and I can't afford a hotel. Then in hostels, you're just going to meet other backpackers from Australia, from America, from France, from Germany, and that's not a bad thing. If you're a solo traveler, then hostels are a must to meet people to go and have these adventures with. Um, but if you've got the group and or you're traveling with friends or a partner, then, but for me personally, I'm not bothered about I'm not bothered about hostels because you can get the adventure at the bars and the cafes and the restaurants, and you're going to meet local people as opposed to travelers. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, of course. Then yeah. So in your travels, then you try really to meet locals and how, like you say, yeah, going to bars and stuff, because some people might be wondering, how do I meet locals? You know, because it can be quite hard when you're traveling to just meet
Yeah,
a
no, it is
local. Yeah.
hard. No, it is hard. Like, and like, so yeah, just go to a bar, you're going to meet someone. That's
Mm-hmm.
not if you're a solo traveler, or it's not as easy as that, really. But there's definitely ways of doing it. Like for now, I went to Istanbul on Saturday. What I do, I like running, so I'm in touch with the Istanbul expat runners
Mm-hmm.
to go for a run with them on Sunday, and I think expats in a country or a city have a whole unique perspective on that place. So it doesn't have to be like a native local. An expat local is just as fascinating because they can see the things that locals can't see. They because then because the locals have lived there all their life. The expats have come in, maybe they've lived there for 10 years, and they can see the things that are really weird or really interesting and really unique. So the expats are great to tap into. So find something that you love, and you can find the groups that there's going to be a group for what you like love doing in that city, whether it's running, football, skating, computers, I don't know. But you can go on Meetup or Couchsurfing or Facebook and find these groups, and that taps you into the local knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way in.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's probably a lot of ways I can just imagine, especially like you said, if you're a solo traveler, that it can be a bit difficult to meet locals, and then you have to get a bit out of your comfort zone. And now that we've talked about traveling and in which countries you've traveled, in this podcast I also like to talk a bit about wellness and about why what impacts can a passion have on wellness. So I wanted to ask you also why you're passionate about traveling. It's also a simple question. And what impacts do you think traveling has on your overall wellness?
Well, that's a good question. I'd say I know, Nina, you're planning an overland trip yourself with your boyfriend. Is that correct? To Southeast Asia or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
Southeast
it's
Asia. Hmm.
it's so hard being on the road for such a long time and living out your suitcase and planning your next trip and like where am I going next, and then you've only got a certain amount of time, so you don't want to miss things. So that causes you stress. Well, I have to go here, I have to go there, and that causes like an impact on your like mental health. You could say like it's because it's stressful. So there's a couple of ways of mitigating that. And it's a bit of a false dichotomy. It's before you go, you can plan and you can say like I have to go here, I have to go here, I want to be here. Um, so all that planning before you go will save you the stress of going, oh right, I'm here now. Where do I go? But then when you are there, don't worry about ignoring that plan. All that planning that you've done beforehand is just so you can, when you're there, you can be comfortable enough to ignore that plan. And it sounds silly saying that, but it's like you've done all the hard work, and now when you're in the country and you go, oh, actually, I really like this town. We'll skip that and we'll go straight. We'll skip that other town and go straight to this other town because your planning and research is giving you the knowledge and the security already. Um, and another thing is like time is a luxury. If you But if you can book a one-way ticket somewhere, it really takes the stress away. you don't have to be on a certain place on a certain time to get your flights. And that's another bonus about using public transport. Flights tend to be hard to cancel, and you usually get better prices well in advance. But if you're using buses and trains, you can just rock up and get the train and get the bus. No big deal without too much planning, and it gives you a bit more flexibility. But all that being said, if you're on the road for such a long time, you do get burnt out, and so don't feel bad and don't feel stressed about just going, you know what, I'm so tired, I can't be bothered thinking for a few days. Let's just book a nice hotel for 3 days and not look at a guidebook and not research and just relax and get back into that state, because it's so easy to get burnt out and stressed out on the road. And for me, I always like running. If I don't run for a few days, I get really stressed and feel horrible. So, and that's just me running, but for other people it might be doing other things. But remember your passions and don't forget about them while you're on the road. Like if you meditate or if you run or you do yoga, find those places and make sure you build that into your travel, because you'll enjoy it and you'll feel better about yourself as well.
Yeah, I can totally understand what you mean with the pressure, because for a lot of people you travel also to relax or just to experience a different lifestyle or to just have a good time. But sometimes by being so focused on having a good time and seeing as much as possible, then you might put unnecessary pressure on yourself, which can take away from the whole experience. So I think that's a good advice that you gave for anyone who wants to travel. And also in terms of the advantages of traveling, there are a few that come often, for example, that traveling can help you be more open-minded and stuff like that. What other advantages would you find, maybe, if someone were to ask you, for example, oh, I want to travel and I don't know, what would it bring me? What would you say?
if someone was asking me that question, I'd say, don't worry about it then. Just stay where you are. But I know what you mean. I'd say the thing that travel taught me the most is probably that we're all the same. Like everybody around the world is all the same. Everybody's just going to work, trying to put food on the table. They've all got stresses and they all take joy out of the same things. And the more places you visit, the more unusual places you visit, that becomes more apparent. So the more I travel, the more I realize is that everyone's the same. And that mentality and that philosophy can it can translate well into everyday life. Like say if you're stuck in an office job and your boss is a, a bad word, a bad person, and then you go, maybe probably they might be having trouble at home. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe their boss is a bad guy, and really we're all the same. And maybe you can you get more empathy from travel. So it's not just like seeing the world as everyone's the same, but you can you can zone in on your own world and go, well, everyone's the same. Everyone's just trying to do the job and get enough money to put food on the table and pay rent and have a nice holiday. Everyone's the same.
Okay, great. So then I think that's it then for the wellness aspect of traveling. I think we've touched on many points on the countries that you visited, your job as a tour leader, the wellness aspect of traveling. So I don't know if there's maybe I want to give you the opportunity to give a last word in terms of maybe an advice you would have for someone who wants to travel but is afraid of getting out of their comfort zone, or maybe a lesson that you've learned from traveling. Anything you want.
Yeah, well, we're talking about all these like fascinating and crazy countries and like, oh yeah, you have to go to Japan. No, like traveling doesn't mean going to a different country or crossing a border or even leaving your town. It's more of a mindset of like you could go to the next village. You could go to that that place that you've never been to. Like for me, like I'm back in the UK now after 8 years. There's so many places in the UK that I haven't visited. Like recently, I've been to Bath, which is there's probably more American tourists that I know that have been to Bath than like these places in our own towns and countries that we take for granted. So the listeners, maybe they don't want to get on the plane or get on the train. Maybe go and just do something different and have your little adventure and travel to the next town, the next village, and just if if you're open minded to like new experiences, and then you you don't have to leave the country. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Go and have an adventure and go and see see that place that you've never been to, that you've lived next door to all your life.
Yeah, that's for sure, because we often take the time, to plan vacation to like another country, but we don't often take the plan to just visit our surroundings. So I definitely think that's a good advice. And I can imagine, like you said, that you've traveled to so many different countries, and now being back to your home country, that must be I don't know if it's like a funny feeling, but when you returned back to the UK, maybe you had that moment, I don't know, where you were thinking, okay, what do I do now, or like I need to travel, or did you feel that need to travel, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I do actually. Like I I want to get back out on the road and get back out living abroad, or like I do miss that lifestyle. I do get very itchy feet being so. This house I'm in now is the longest I've been in a house for ages, for a long time. It's good because you get friends in an area and you become used to the house, but also I'm I think I've got this mindset now where I want I want to be on the road and I want to be in exciting places. So finding that balance is hard, especially as you get older and societal pressures. It is hard to find that balance, but certainly I'm not done traveling or living abroad yet. I've
Hmm.
only just started. I
Yeah,
think.
and like you
I hope.
said, you can find a balance for sure, maybe of like having still like a base somewhere, traveling, coming back, or I mean, there's no rules
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
yeah. Ideally, like my ideal world would be 6 months working in the summer, which is kind of what tour leaders do, and then 6 months spent traveling in a different country. And that was kind of the plan, but the pandemic has
Hmm.
kind of scuppered that plan for now. But hopefully, maybe to 2023, that's something that I can start doing again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that seems like a nice plan for sure. And then you have that balance. So I hope also that in 2023, then you'll be able to do that. It's kind of hard to know. We just have to go with the flow a little bit. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me on this episode. Would you like to mention, maybe, I don't think we've said it, the name of your own podcast on which you talk also about traveling?
Yeah, like if any of your listeners are actually like travel, I've got a podcast called Travel Bubble Podcast.
Hmm.
Travel Bubble, Bubble, and basically I talk to like top travelers because I'm not a top traveler, but I speak to people who've been to every country in the world, or they've been to hundreds of countries, and basically find out what the top three countries are. So then, basically, to get inspiration to go for where to go to next, because these people have been to every country. I want to know where their favorites are, so then I can go to those places. And same for the listeners. Like if the same country keeps getting mentioned over and over again, it must be for a reason. Like for instance, Japan's been chosen 9 times
Okay.
by 40 guests. That's 25% of guests are choosing Japan, and they've been everywhere. So Japan must be worth visiting. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's an example.
That's great. Yeah.
But if you like travel, or if you can understand my voice, then you could always listen to that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And also, on which other platforms, maybe social media, can people find you?
Yeah, Instagram, Matty Dyas, MattyDyas on Instagram, and Facebook. Matty Dyas is my name, and I'm
Okay.
everywhere with that name.
And in case also for the to lead tours, then do if people are interested, do they
Yeah,
contact you? Just mhm.
yeah. Get in touch. Get in touch. Matty Dyas. Yeah, get in touch. I'm a freelancer for other companies, but I can certainly point you in the right direction. And if you're ever in the UK, then I can certainly help you out. Putting together my own trips towards the end of 2022 is something that I'm looking at now. So maybe taking a group on an adventure to a country for a week or two. That's the plan. So if anyone
Okay.
wanted to come abroad with the fourth best tour leader in the world, just give me a message.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. This was definitely an interesting episode for me, and I always love talking with people who have traveled and hearing more about their experiences. So I'm sure that was valuable for me and for others. So I thank you once more for joining me on this podcast and for sharing your passion for traveling.
No, thank you, Nina. Thank you for having me, and best of luck with your trip abroad to Southeast Asia. And if you ever need any help or anything, or any advice or the best places to go, Southeast Asia is I know it, so do get in touch and let me know.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a famous, I don't know, but like a recurrent destination for young backpackers, I think, Southeast Asia. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I hope it will be possible with COVID. It's always like we said, the question mark. But that's the plan, at least, to go there.
Class. Well, good luck.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for listening to this podcast episode. You can find the podcast also on Instagram. It's the Life They Live _ podcast. And don't hesitate to also leave a review on Apple Podcast or a comment on YouTube. And I'll see you for the next episode of The Life They Live.